Picture this for a second. You're at the absolute peak of your career, right? You're on top of the world, and then, poof, it literally all evaporates overnight. We're talking 1986, just a year before the infamous Black Monday crash. Larry Fink, who was this absolute darling of Wall Street at the time, has just suffered a catastrophic loss. That number right there, minus $100 million, yeah, it's not a typo. That is exactly what he lost in a single quarter of trading. Fink was mortified, utterly humiliated. He was rapidly sidelined by his peers, and suddenly, nobody wanted to be seen with him. He was basically untouchable, and his once stellar reputation was completely destroyed.
So that brings us to a really fascinating puzzle we're exploring today. You have to ask yourself, how on earth does someone bounce back from a career-ending failure of that magnitude? How did the guy behind this highly public, massive mistake manage to turn his humiliating failure into the absolute foundation of the most powerful financial empire the world has ever seen?
Welcome to The Explainer. I am seriously so excited to guide you through this today. We're going to be unpacking a truly incredible story and demystifying the unprecedented corporate power of a single entity, BlackRock. It's a crazy story of risk, redemption, and absolute market dominance that honestly probably affects your own wallet today.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with that infamous $100 million mistake, move into the birth of a giant, explore Wall Street's fixer, examine the ETF revolution, and finally uncover the ultimate influencer. We're tracking this wild rise from a ruined bond trader to the man a lot of people call the JP Morgan of the 21st century.
Chapter 1. The $100 million Mistake. Now, to really understand the failure, we first have to look at the meteoric rise that came before it, back in the 70s and 80s.
So right out of the gate, Fink was incredibly innovative. Starting at the investment bank First Boston in 1976, he actually became their very first Freddie Mac bond trader, right as the mortgage market was just in its infancy. But his real genius? It was recognizing the raw power of technology. In 1982, his team became among the very first to put personal computers directly on their trading desks. This let Fink mathematically dissect the complex cash flows of mortgages. And because of this massive technological edge, Fink's department became the single most profitable component of First Boston from 1983 to 1985. They generated a staggering $1 billion in profit for the firm. He was young, he was wildly successful, and he felt completely invincible.
But that invincibility was a total illusion. As Fink himself later admitted, quote, "We were taking bigger and bigger risks without the intended risk technology to navigate that risk." See, they had built all this wealth under the assumption that certain disasters simply couldn't happen. So when the market completely shifted in the second quarter of 1986, that lack of proper risk management caused a colossal $100 million single-quarter loss. It wiped out his entire first quarter gains and then some. This one singular painful event changed Fink's entire philosophy on finance forever. Chapter 2, Birth of a Giant. Fast forward to age 36, and Fink is virtually unemployed. He's been pushed to the sidelines, but the guy is fiercely competitive and completely desperate to rebuild his legacy.
It took him about a year and a half to really regroup, but he finally partnered up with private equity legend Steve Schwarzman in 1988. Schwarzman, who ran a firm called Blackstone, had a serious eye for top-tier talent, and he saw Fink's potential, even with a heavily damaged reputation. They launched a joint venture together called Blackstone Financial Management, with a surprisingly humble $5 million initial investment. Now, Fink's central thesis for this new company was born directly from his own failure. He firmly believed the financial industry and its investors were basically flying blind, and that they desperately needed a company anchored in advanced risk analytics, especially for fixed-income bonds.
And while the business started making money almost immediately, they grew to $8 billion under management in just 5 years, the partnership itself was kind of a ticking time bomb. There was this huge stark contrast in leadership styles. On one side, you've got Larry Fink, the classic trader. He's highly competitive, hungry for aggressive growth, and constantly pushing to give out stock options so they can attract more top talent. On the other side, Steve Schwarzman, the investment banker, unusually conservative, viscerally risk-averse, with this almost primal impulse against losing money. These were two very distinct alphas with entirely opposing philosophies, which meant their egos were absolutely doomed to clash.
Predictably, that tension reached a breaking point. Fink, who was determined to run things his own way, started shopping around to find a buyer so he could sever ties with Blackstone entirely. In 1991, PNC Bank stepped up. They were on this aggressive buying spree and offered hundreds of millions of dollars to buy out Blackstone's stake. The return on that initial $5 million investment was enormous, so Schwarzman agreed to sell. But looking back today, Letting Fink go is very often considered the single biggest mistake of Schwartzman's career, because this buyout freed Larry Fink to build his own independent entity, which would eventually be named BlackRock, entirely on his own terms.
Chapter 3. Wall Street's Fixer. By 1994, Fink's absolute obsession with risk statistics started paying off in ways nobody expected. This right here is where BlackRock gets its first major breakout moment. General Electric, under Jack Welch, had just acquired the investment bank Kidder Peabody, only to discover it was totally loaded with toxic assets. Specifically, they had $10 billion in these incredibly complex mortgage-backed derivatives that no one else on Wall Street wanted to even touch. No one except Larry Fink. BlackRock's quantitative analysts worked around the clock to break this problem down. They reevaluated the $10 billion portfolio, masterfully used financial engineering to repackage them into brand new securities, and then helped GE gradually unload them with very minimal loss. This totally cemented BlackRock's reputation. They officially became Wall Street's Ghostbuster. The only team you'd call to clean up an impossible, toxic mess.
And that Ghostbuster reputation, it scaled up spectacularly during the 2008 housing collapse. After years of deregulation starting around 2000, the market was flooded with the very derivatives Fink had helped pioneer, which had now turned into a massive ticking time bomb. When the market finally collapsed, the U.S. government and leading banks like JP Chase simply didn't know how to navigate the toxic wreckage. So what do? They put Larry Fink on speed dial. In early 2008, he was brought in to help with the Bear Stearns bailout, and by late 2008, he was actually helping orchestrate the rescue of AIG alongside major figures like Hank Paulson and Jamie Dimon. Navigating this crisis effectively crowned Fink as the undisputed new king of Wall Street.
Chapter 4. The ETF Revolution. Rising from the ashes of that 2008 crisis, the financial landscape fundamentally shifted. Highly complex fixed-income derivatives were suddenly totally radioactive, and a whole new era of investing was beginning. Enter the ETF, or Exchange Traded Fund. Instead of hunting for these immense, highly risky whales, Fink realized he could just sweep up all the smaller fish with unprecedented volume. By offering a simple passive fund that just tracked market indices with minimal fees, Fink knew the internet age would let BlackRock scale these to the masses instantly. It was this brilliant structural pivot away from active, high-fee management toward the sheer scale of passive investing. And it perfectly positioned them for the massive bull market that was right around the corner.
This elegantly simple realization led to total sheer market domination. In 2009, right in the immediate aftermath of the housing crisis, BlackRock aggressively entered this space by acquiring iShares from Barclays. By prioritizing sheer volume over their profit margins per trade, BlackRock captured nearly half of the entire U.S. ETF market. Just in 1 year, 2014, they raised $103 billion. They became the undisputed heavyweight champion of passive investing.
Chapter 5. The Ultimate Influencer. When you combine that crazy passive investing dominance with BlackRock's proprietary risk software, you unlock a level of influence that is honestly hard to even comprehend. The metrics here are just staggering. BlackRock isn't a bank, it's an investment company, yet it handles over $7 trillion in direct management and oversees another $20 trillion through its proprietary software worldwide. Because of their incredibly expansive ETF funds, they are a major shareholder in almost every single public company you can think of. Think about this. They hold $50 billion stakes in defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. Their global reach even extends to being the largest pension manager in places like Japan and Mexico. This kind of scale turns everyday investments, like maybe even your own retirement account or 401k, into active, undeniable global influence. And Larry Fink leverages that exact scale brilliantly. For a long time, sure, BlackRock was passive. But recently, Fink recognized that being the top shareholder means you have the power to demand actual accountability. BlackRock built up a corporate stewardship team to directly pressure the boards of the world's largest companies. As Fink himself articulated, they now actively ask companies to detail their long-term plans and prove that they've reviewed those strategies with their boards. They are using the immense voting power granted by all those everyday ETFs to act as real global power players, shaping exactly how corporations behave all around the world.
And that leaves us with a really profound question to ponder today. What are the actual implications of a single firm holding this much unparalleled, almost invisible power over the entire global economy? Larry Fink transformed the utter humiliation of a $100 million mistake into a company that now essentially owns a piece of everything, It's a huge testament to the power of risk management, strategic pivots, and just sheer scale. But as BlackRock continues to guide trillions of dollars and influence global boardrooms, you really have to wonder, where do the limits of that power truly lie? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. See you